I'm no detective. I'm a retired fund manager from Boston who once believed marriage was a contract without an escape clause. 5 years ago, I scattered my wife's ashes into the Atlantic off Rockport, Massachusetts. I said words a pastor helped me choose signed papers the Commonwealth gave me and learned how to sleep on one side of a bed. I turned 68 this winter. I keep my books tidy, my porch painted, and my voice quiet. On a gray Monday in March, I was at the pine table paying the electric bill when an old habit pulled me to the news. Not headlines, the small stuff, announcements, people in suits shaking hands. I clicked into the Miami Herald Society section, page 7 on the e-edition, because a former colleague had moved south, and sometimes his charity photos showed up there. There it was, a small feature with a bright photo: Coral Gables entrepreneur John Whitaker to marry Isabel Moore at Vizcaya, June 14th. I felt the air leave my chest. The bride in the picture lifted her chin the same way Eleanor did when she wanted the last word. The left wrist carried a pale diagonal scar, the gutter ladder accident I'd bandaged in our yard back in 2016. Around her neck was the same pearl pendant I'd clasped for our 10th anniversary in Portsmouth. The caption called her Isabel. My hands knew better. I didn't call the police. I didn't storm an airport. I've lived long enough to know that feelings don't win in court. Paper does. So I called the one person who had walked me through hard paper before. Henry Caldwell. He answered, that steady Boston baritone I've trusted since the 90s. It's Arthur, I said. I think Eleanor's alive. New name. Miami, June 14th. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was grieving wrong. He asked, what made you think so? The Herald Society page, I said. Photo, scar on the wrist, our pendant. Same posture I lived with for 20 years. Henry let the silence sit a second. All right, he said. We don't chase ghosts, we verify people. Don't do a thing on your own. I'll connect you with someone who knows where numbers hide. Her name's Marlene Ortiz, he said. 58, ex-IRS criminal investigation. She's a licensed PI now. She uses subpoenas, not search bars. I wrote the name and number on a yellow pad and underlined June 14th. That date stared back at me like a deadline someone else had chosen. When I hung up, I stood at the sink and watched the cold water run until it stung my fingers. Rockport was quiet outside, gulls arguing the distant thud of a lobster boat. Inside, my house smelled like coffee and cedar and the kind of calm you only get after years of noise. I had no taste for drama. I wanted the truth. I called Marlene. This is Ortiz, she said. Her voice had the clipped patience of someone who has heard every story and still shows up on time. My name is Arthur Sterling, I said. I believe my wife, presumed dead 5 years ago, is alive in Florida under the name Isabel Moore. I need to know if belief is a fact. Send me the basics, she said. Full legal name for your wife, date of death, copy of the certificate, any dental records, old driver's licenses, your marriage license, and the Miami Herald link. I'll talk with your attorney, so privilege is clean. I scanned the presumed death certificate the state issued after the Coast Guard reports. I attached our marriage license, the old Salem dentist's info, a photo of the pendant, and the Miami Herald page. Then I wrote one sentence I didn't think I'd ever type: wedding listed for June 14th at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. My finger hovered over send. I pressed it. Within an hour, Marlene replied with a simple outline. 1. Identity verification, biometrics from public photos, cross-check with prior license, dental entries. 2. Background build for Isabel Moore, SSN driver's license issuance date, any name changes, property records. 3. Financial spines companies, Shells Wire activity indicators. 4. Independent verification of the wedding date and vendor list. Her last line read, you will not contact any party. You will not confront anyone. You will let me and Mr. Caldwell carry the water. I wrote back, agreed. I made tea I didn't want and stared at the photo again. If you've ever loved someone, you know their small signatures, the tilt of a smile, the way the eyes settle after a laugh, the habit of turning the left wrist when nervous. The picture had all of them, but I had promised myself I would not be the old man who saw ghosts and strangers. Marlene called the next day. I'm starting with identity, she said. If we can't prove Isabel is Eleanor, this stops. What do you need from me? I asked. Patience, she said, and money for records. We're doing this by the book. Henry looped in on the calls. He set up a client file, logged every document, and reminded me we were not chasing a story, we were preparing a case. He talked about chain of custody like we were already in court. He asked me to forward every thought, every link to his secure portal. So I did. Then I put my laptop away and went out to fix the loose porch board that had bothered me since January. The days in March stretched long and thin. I kept to my routine morning walk, coffee at Roy Moore's, if the line was short, church on Sundays, calls with Henry twice a week, brief check-ins with Marlene. She didn't overshare. Working, she'd say. We'll have something when it's real. I like that. On the last Monday of March, Marlene called at dusk. Mr. Sterling, she said, preliminary identity match is strong. The dental office in Salem still had an old panoramic x-ray. The Florida DMV record for Isabel Moore shows work consistent with it. I'll confirm with a former hygienist who remembers your wife's chipped molar left side. I also pulled the vendor permits for Vizcaya, date is June 14th. Your name doesn't appear anywhere, which is good. We'll keep it that way. I sat down. So I'm not crazy, I said. No, she answered. You're a widower who might not be a widower. I asked the only question that mattered. What happens next April and May? She said simply. We trace money. Offshore if it went there. We look for a company called Legacy Holdings or anything like it. We do it with subpoenas and old friends who still answer my calls at IRS. It will take time. You won't like that part. I can do time, I said. I did 5 years. She was quiet for a beat. Understood. After we hung up, I stood on the porch and let the cold sink through my shirt. Down the street, a kid on a bike laughed at nothing in particular. Somewhere in Miami, a woman calling herself Isabel was picking linen samples and cake flavors. I didn't feel rage. I felt a clock start. I didn't take revenge that night. I hired it lawful, patient, boring revenge that looks like forms and file numbers and dates stamped in ink. I told Henry to bill me fair. I told Marlene I'd be a good client. Then I closed the door, turned off the kitchen light, and let March end. April bled into May. I waited. Fixed the porch step that snagged my sock every morning. Walked to Back Beach at dusk. Watched the same gulls argue over nothing. The phone stayed quiet, but every nail I drove was a question I didn't have to ask out loud. At the end of May, Marlene asked for a meeting at Henry's office on State Street. She laid out 3 folders on the conference table. Identity, she said, tapping the first. Isabel Moore is Eleanor May Sterling. Dental indicators, DMV timeline corroborated by a hygienist who signed an affidavit. Tap. Money. We can show your insurance wire to Legacy Holdings Cayman, formed the week of the presumed death. We can show a Miller-controlled trust buying a house with cash later on. We can't see the interbank books without a warrant, but the spine is there. Tap. Opportunity and motive. Eleanor contacts David in the months before the storm. He positions the trust. She disappears. Reappears as Isabel Lifestyle. Beyond visible means engaged to a man with a healthy business and good credit. Henry steepled his fingers. And John Whitaker, he asked. Clean, Marlene said. Logistics company. Pays taxes. Helps charities. He thinks he's marrying a widow who works in event design. He's not part of this. I looked at the window and saw my reflection in the glass, older, thinner, steady. So what do we do first, I asked. Henry pushed a single-page draft across to me. It was a letter with my name at the top and David's address in Coconut Grove below. The tone was dry as dust. Mr. Miller, it read, we have obtained evidence suggesting your participation in insurance fraud, wire fraud, and identity fraud connected to the presumed death of Eleanor May Sterling. You are invited to appear at our office on June 2nd at 10:00 a.m. to discuss your cooperation. This meeting will be recorded. If you decline, we will transmit our file to federal authorities and pursue civil remedies without further notice. I breathed out. He won't come, I said. Marlene shrugged. He will if he wants to control anything about his landing. Henry slid me a second draft, a formal letter to John Whitaker from his firm notarized. It didn't accuse, it invited. Mr. Whitaker, it said we represent a Massachusetts resident with information bearing on your fiancé's identity. We request a confidential meeting with you and your counsel to review records before your planned June 14th ceremony. I traced the date with my finger. 3 months from discovery to decision. March to June. A clean line. Henry capped his pen. We keep it lawful, Mr. Sterling. We keep it slow. Justice doesn't run, it arrives. I nodded. Send them. When I stepped back onto State Street, the traffic sounded like surf. I wasn't angry. I was ready. The letters went out by courier. The clock kept its pace. June 2nd and 10 a.m. Henry Caldwell's State Street office smelled like paper and old leather. We chose the glass conference room with a camera in the corner. A digital recorder sat in the middle. A notary waited with a yellow seal. Marlene Ortiz stood by the window, calm the way people are when they hold cards. Henry began. For the record, my client is Arthur Sterling. Present are Mr. Sterling, investigator Marlene Ortiz. Myself, my associate, and Mr. David Miller invited pursuant to our letter of May 27th. David tried the smile that used to work on rooms. It didn't work here. The linen jacket, the Florida tan, the sweat along his hairline, none of it helped. Henry slid a document across. Cooperation agreement. You provide complete documents and truthful testimony about the presumed death of Eleanor May Sterling Legacy Holdings Leonard and the movement of insurance proceeds. In return, we file an anonymous IRS tip noting your willingness to self-surrender. No immunity. David didn't touch the pen. You have nothing, he said. Marlene opened a folder. 3 photos. Coconut Grove, she said. Your house paid in cash through Miller Family Trust. Deed recorded 18 months after a $3 million payout left Mr. Sterling's account for Legacy Holdings Cayman, where you are the listed director. She laid down the Cayman registrar entry, the swift confirmation naming him as beneficiary contact, and a transcript from a bar where he bragged. The room tightened. You tapped my phone, he asked. No, Marlene said. We listened where you bragged. Henry folded his hands. If you decline, we transmit the file to IRS and the U.S. Attorney by close of business. If you cooperate, we send the same tip noting you began cooperation today. Your choice is timing and posture, not outcome. David looked at me. Arthur, we were friends. We were, I said. Then you helped my wife fake her death and walk off with my future. He exhaled. What do you want? First emails with Eleanor, Henry said. Drafts of the presumed death packet, Cayman Incorporation, trust attorneys, copies of identity documents used by Eleanor after, and the path after Cayman, Marlene added. Panama, BVI, Delaware, where the money slept next. David stared at the pen. You'll tell IRS I cooperated. We'll tell the truth, Henry said, that it started today. He signed. For the next hour, he talked names, dates how Eleanor mapped the presumed death file months before the storm, how he formed Legacy, how the first transfer split $2.8 million into a numbered account, the rest to fees and temporary placement language he now called bait. He gave the name of a Miami lawyer who opened a mailbox for Isabel, the prepaid phone vendor she used, and the second bank where she parked funds after Cayman tightened rules. Marlene's questions boxed him in. Who drafted the sworn statements? Who notarized the fisherman's affidavit? Whose idea was the hair color change for the new license each time his eyes dipped? Eleanor. Eleanor. On the third mind, too. Henry slid the agreement back for initials on each page. The notary stamped hard. Henry spoke into the recorder. Mr. Miller has executed a cooperation agreement and delivered a preliminary production emails incorporation, documents, bank confirmations, and a photocopy of a passport in the name Isabel Moore, bearing the likeness of Eleanor May Sterling. Further production due June 9th. David rubbed his face. What happens to me? You retain counsel, Henry said. We will file the IRS tip today, noting cooperation. You will arrange a self-surrender after government review. If you run, they will find you. He nodded small. She's marrying June 14th, he said, at Vizcaya. You gonna blow it up? We're not breaking a ceremony, I said. We'll tell the truth at the reception. Quiet room, clean video. He tried to smile and failed. She'll hate that more. Marlene closed her notebook. Do not warn her. If you reach out, the tip will note obstruction. David stood. I chose my future 5 years ago. He left without a handshake. Henry capped his pen. We courier the IRS tip this afternoon, he said. Marlene log chain of custody. Arthur go home, rest. We're on schedule. I stepped onto State Street and let the city noise wash over me. No triumph, just numbers lining up. Revenge wasn't fire. It was a ledger, and today a column balanced with one hard signature. The notarized letter went to John Whitaker's office in Coral Gables on June 7th. Henry's firm sent it by courier return receipt with his bar number at the bottom, so any lawyer could check it in 5 minutes. It didn't accuse. It invited. We represent a Massachusetts resident with information bearing on your fiancé's identity. We request a confidential meeting with you and your counsel before your June 14th ceremony. He didn't call me. He called Henry's receptionist first, then he checked the bar number. Then he sent the letter to his own attorney. 2 days passed. On June 9th, Henry's assistant put him through. Mr. Sterling John said, voice tight, "If this is a stunt, it ends today." "It isn't," I said. "Bring counsel. Bring questions." "I will," he said. "But I won't bring blind faith." He hired his own investigator, a local named Luis Delgado, who knew which windows were public and which doors required court orders. Luis verified the Florida driver's license for Isabel Moore, date of issuance 4 years back. He pulled a copy of the marriage license application. He talked to a hygienist in Salem who remembered Eleanor with the chipped molar on the left. He confirmed the Vizcaya vendor list. He looked at bank liens and found none on Isabel, which raised the oldest red flag, a life without fingerprints. John scheduled the meeting for June 10th, 2 p.m., Café La Trova on Calle Ocho, neutral ground. His attorney, Rachel Kim, would attend. Henry and Marlene would sit with me. We met at a back table. John looked like a man who'd run a marathon without moving jaw. Set eyes, rimmed red knuckles, white on the menu he wasn't reading. Rachel wore the patient look good lawyers keep for bad days. Henry opened with the basics. He slid a thin folder across. Identity, he said. Affidavit from a former hygienist. DMV issuance timeline. Side-by-side marks, wrist scar, dental chip, pearl pendant, provenance. John looked and his face didn't change. "You can buy a pendant," he said. Marlene nodded. "Sure can," she said. "You can't buy the chip a Salem dentist charted 12 years ago, or the way a left eye settles post-smile. We don't lead juries with sentiment, Mr. Whitaker. We give them 2 pictures and a hygienist who remembers hands." Henry slid the second folder. "Money," he said. "Insurance payout to my client in August 5 years ago. 10 days later, a wire to Legacy Holdings, Lenatomic, Cayman, formed the week of the presumed death. Director David Miller, former colleague, to my client. 18 months later, a cash purchase in Coconut Grove by a Miller Trust. No mortgage. Your fiancé's visible lifestyle tracks the timeline of concealed funds." John's eyes flicked to Rachel. She skimmed a page, then another, then gave the smallest nod. "The spine is there," she said. "We'd need subpoenas to see the organs." Marlene placed the third folder on the table, emails, and the cooperation agreement David signed 2 days prior. "This is why we're early with you," she said. "Miller's turning. He'll testify that Eleanor Sterling staged a presumed death and reemerged as Isabel Moore. He'll place her in the middle of the setup and himself on the edge. It's self-preservation, not charity, but it corroborates what we have." John's hand went to his chest as if checking whether his heart was still there. He closed the folders and stared at the condensation on his glass. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why tell me now?" "Because you're clean," I said, "and you're the only person who can give this an ending that sticks." He looked up. "You want me to blow up my own wedding?" "No," I said. "We don't touch the ceremony. Your vows are yours to keep or cancel. But at the reception in a private room, you play a video. No shouting, no ambush in front of a minister. Just truth for the people she invited to believe her." He studied me. "What's on the video?" 3 things, Marlene said. A single photo from their first wedding, a copy of the presumed death certificate, and Mr. Miller's recorded statement. 90 seconds total. No editorial, no narration. John rubbed his temples. "If this is wrong, I ruin a woman in front of everyone she knows." "If this is right," Rachel said quietly, "you're saving your company, your name, and a lot of other people from the same ruin." He turned to me. "You want revenge, I want the ledger to balance," I said, "and I want you protected." Henry slid one last page across. "Cooperation letter," he said. "We'll memorialize your role as a victim witness. We'll deliver our file to IRS and the U.S. Attorney regardless, but we'll note that you came forward verified independently and assisted. We'll also draft an affidavit for annulment. John took a breath that sounded like surrender and backbone mixed together. Conditions, he said. 1, no disruption at the ceremony. 2, I upload the video myself to the AV as family slideshow. You don't touch their equipment. 3, no arrest inside the venue. If authorities act, they do it outside after. Agreed, Henry said. Marlene added, and 1 condition from us, you do not confront her before the day. If she smells heat, she runs. Let the paperwork. He nodded. What do I tell my mother? My staff? Why the private room? Because people deserve dignity even when they've forfeited a name, I said, and because a quiet reveal is harder to spin. Rachel closed the folders and stacked them neat. We'll need copies, she said. You'll have them tonight, Henry replied, plus a secure link to the video. Mr. Whitaker, you'll rename it, place it in the playlist, and tell your tech to run it when you say family. John looked at me across the table. What if she looks me in the eye and tells me she loves me? Love doesn't delete bank records, I said, and it doesn't resurrect the dead. He nodded once like a man deciding to wake up. Then we do it my way. Private room, 90 seconds. After that, I walk her to the parking lot. If there's a warrant, it belongs to the government, not me. Marlene stood. It will be there when it's there, she said. They don't run on our schedule. We shook hands, 4 adults choosing paper over fireworks. Back in my hotel, I sat on the bed and watched the ceiling fan turn. I didn't feel triumph. I felt the gravity of a man's life changing course because of my voice on a telephone. I whispered a simple promise to the empty room. We would keep it clean. June 14th came hot and bright. Vizcaya's gardens gleamed like old money. I wore a plain gray suit and kept to the edges. John nodded to me once from across the terrace. His face was composed. The minister spoke. The vows were said. I didn't move. We had promised not to touch the ceremony. At 8 o'clock, staff guided a smaller group to a side salon with cool stone walls and a ceiling painted to look like sky. John had asked the coordinator for a private toast with family. That word did the work. The door closed. The noise of the larger party faded to a murmur. John stood by the mic. He looked at the people who loved him. Then he looked at the woman beside him, the one I once loved. Before we cut the cake, he said, I've put together a short family slideshow. He lifted a hand toward the booth. The AV tech briefed by John alone nodded. The screen lit up. First slide, me and Eleanor, smiling. Second slide, the death certificate. Eleanor May Sterling, presumed drowned. Third slide, David's voice, I helped her fake her death. The room didn't breathe. No one shouted. A chair leg scraped. Someone's bracelet tapped the stem of a glass. Eleanor's smile held 1 second too long, then lowered like a curtain. She didn't look at me. She looked at John. He kept his voice level. Isabel, he said, we're going to step outside and speak privately. My car is this way. His hand did not reach for hers. He walked, she followed. She walked past me. I didn't move. Just 1 sentence. You kept the scar, Eleanor. You should have kept the truth. She didn't look back. We crossed the colonnade into the soft Miami dark. The bougainvillea smelled like sugar and earth. Parked under a fig tree sat 2 unremarkable sedans. A man and a woman waited beside them, dressed like the kind of people you forget until they ask your name. Ms. Moore, the woman said calmly. Badge clear. We're with IRS Criminal Investigation working with the U.S. Attorney's Office. There is a federal warrant for your arrest in connection with insurance fraud, wire fraud, and identity fraud. We can do this quietly here or loudly somewhere else. It's your choice. Eleanor looked at John. For a moment, her face softened into something that once could have been love. Then it hardened into something I knew too well, calculation. She nodded to the agents. Quietly, she said. They read her rights by the passenger side door. No cuffs in the moonlight. No spectacle. Just the end of a performance offstage as agreed. The sedans pulled away without sirens. A breeze came up from the water and pressed against my shirt. John stood a few steps from me. He didn't speak right away. When he did, it was simple. Thank you. Take care of yourself, I said. Call Henry tomorrow. He'll file your annulment. He nodded and went back inside to a crowd that would need plain words and clean truth. I stayed where I was and watched the tail lights disappear down a gravel curve. The days after went the way paper goes. Henry delivered our file to the U.S. attorney and the insurance company. Marlene logged every chain of custody step. David, through his own counsel, arranged a surrender and kept producing documents. I flew home to Rockport and waited. The headlines came small at first, then steady. Coral Gables woman indicted in insurance fraud scheme. Cayman shell tied to presumed death. No one used words like evil or monster. They used the kind that hold up in court. In July, I sat in a federal lobby with a styrofoam cup and my name on a sign-in sheet. I gave a victim impact statement that didn't mention rage. I talked about years. I said debt and sleep and trust, and the prosecutor nodded like someone doing a job with guardrails. I like that. In September, sentences were handed down. Eleanor pleaded to wire fraud, insurance fraud, and identity fraud. The judge called it a long lie that traveled through institutions. 7 years. David, for his cooperation, drew 3. The courtroom didn't cheer, it just recorded. A month later, a check cleared. Restitution and civil recovery brought me $1.4 million, what was left after debts, fees, taxes, and the distance between what vanishes and what returns. Henry shook my hand in the hallway. "It's not all of it," he said. "It's what the law could carry back." I told him it was enough. Fallen Rockport tastes like salt and paint. I replaced the porch rail Eleanor used to lean on and sanded the splinters out of the step that always snagged my sock. Gus at the hardware store said, "Those screws bite better," and handed me a fresh box. Mrs. Carr from church left a loaf on my stoop with a note that said, "Lighter looks good on you." I took the old cigar box down from the shelf. I didn't burn anything. I didn't throw anything away. I added one page the docket sheet with the words, United States v. Eleanor May Sterling, A. K. Isabel Moore, and closed the lid. The past didn't need erasing. It needed proper filing. In the evenings, I walk to Back Beach and sit on the low wall where the granite warms your back, even after the sun is gone. Sometimes I bring coffee. Sometimes I bring nothing. The tide keeps its appointments. Gulls argue like they always have. Every so often, my phone buzzes with a text from John, a photo of a new office sign, a line that says, "Starting clean." He didn't marry that night. He annulled, sued for damages, and put his company back on its feet. A good ending for a man who chose paper over fire. I don't think about Eleanor every day. When I do, I don't picture the white dress or the warrant. I picture a woman on a ladder in our yard in 2016 insisting she could fix the gutters herself, and me on the ground telling her to come down. The scar on her wrist is the only part that stayed true across names. If you're listening to this and carrying a lie someone handed you, hear me. Plain patience is not weakness. Paper is not dull. It is how ordinary people win in a country built on records and dates. We didn't make a scene. We made a case. I didn't take revenge. I balanced the ledger. And this time I held the pen.